This presentation will cover the community policing portion of the two one-page papers that will serve as the final for this course. As you prepare the paper, one of the things to keep in mind is that we have historically had a conflict between American citizens and their government. There's an adversarial relationship. One of the most common aspects where you'll see people who are in this country doing something that people in a lot of other countries are not willing to do, such as argue with the police. The best example I can give you of that is the traffic enforcement and car stops and stops where a pedestrian or a person has been hanging out on a street corner or otherwise has been stopped by a police officer. And in fact, we've got a good body of case law on the stop and frisks and what police are allowed to do and what they are not allowed to do. The next issue that we want to look at with crime and the community policing concept is that, as I had indicated during the another course lecture earlier in the course, our society used to be largely organized around homogeneous groups. For example, we see in Philadelphia all the ethnic neighborhoods, the Italians in South Philadelphia, the black population largely concentrated in West and North Philadelphia, the Irish largely concentrated in Tacony in the Northeast, and there's interspersed in all parts of the city or other ethnic neighborhoods. One that should not be overlooked is Chinatown in Center City. So we see all the this diverse ethnic group of people, but when we take a look at the police, really up until about 20 years ago, the police were largely white males, roughly 18 to 50 years old. Most had served in the military and had a background in fairly disciplined organizations, and were brought into police work because of the availability of the jobs following the Second World War. If we take a look at the public, as I had indicated, we have a lot of variance in race, age, and sex. One of the areas that we should keep in mind when we begin discussing the issue of police-citizen encounters is that both parties come in with some preconceived notions into their encounter. For example, the police officer will have preconceived notions of the citizen, and those will be based on race, ethnicity, age, experience in dealing with that individual, experience in dealing with that individual's family, friends. These will all come into play. Now, the citizens also carry a lot of stereotypes and perceptions of the police into their contact. For example, the citizen may have had other contacts with police, either positive or negative. The citizen may be involved in crime. Citizen may be involved in a street gang or something along those lines. Or the citizen may be just, a loner. And each one of them will bring something into that contact that is going to shape how the encounter between the officer and that individual is going to go. So a lot of this does bring about the racial, ethnic, and the behavioral-based complaints that citizens make about police officers. But we should keep in mind that the communication thing here is that dynamic is very much a two-way street, and both parties are going to shape that contact between the police officer and the citizen based on their backgrounds, what they brought into the conversation, and how the conversation started. Now, as I had indicated, one of the things that with the preconceived notions that come into the police-citizen encounter, we certainly cannot overlook the racial friction. If we go back into the earliest times of American policing, one of the things that police were formed as, especially in the southern states, were as runaway slave patrols. So one of the things we should look and should understand is that since police are the representative of government and uh, frequently are going to form that first and only encounter that citizens and a lot of citizens will have with their government, the police can be seen as a representative of a social or a socioeconomic system that has a history of repressing people. Uh, One of the things we also do see, even up into modern times, is that there is a high level of contact between police and minority males. If you take a look at the or recall from the new Cops film that we saw earlier in the course, one of the things that does occur there is that you know even the minority police officers were saying that if you want to do real police work, you had to work in the poorer neighborhoods in the city. So police do bring in this representation of a social and economic system that many people believe is repressive. Uh, I would argue that the system is not all that repressive, that people are largely ignorant, or, and I don't mean in this using ignorant in the term of it being rude, but I mean it in the terms that they do not understand that and know about what opportunities exist out there in society for them. And when they learn that they can start businesses, that they can make it in the system, um, if you don't know that, you just see the police as the people who are repressing you. So, just keep in mind that as we're going through this, that this is one of the dynamics that's at play in every one of these neighborhoods. Moving into community policing, one of the things that we should be aware of is some definitions and to kind of lay some ground rules with what it is we're trying to get done here. So the first thing we really should take a look at is what is a community? We can define community as either geography or interests. If we define it as geography, we're defining space or boundaries. For example, I had indicated that a lot of the Irish had settled into Tacony in Philadelphia. A lot of Chinese, the first wave of immigration from China, we see Chinatown develop in Philadelphia. We see some very famous Chinatowns. For example, how many of you would have or would like to take a trip to San Francisco to go to Chinatown? It's a very interesting place to go. So that's a definition of a geographic community. We're definitely defining space and we're defining boundaries. If we take a look at the other definition or the other uh, concept of a community, we take a look at interests, and interests are defined by common interests. For example, I recall one commandant of the California Highway Patrol referring to the people who would be resisting arrest, that as California Highway Patrol began to adopt that side handle baton, the PR-24, he had indicated that in the community of people who were likely to resist California Highway Patrol officers, and they're arresting these individuals, the California Highway Patrol had a new tool in their arsenal or on their belt for dealing with those individuals, and that is the interest that he was looking at. If we take a look at other interests, we see um, a lot of the civil rights leadership that will define all persons who are black Americans as a community. So what they're defining there is a set of common interests. Uh, and in that one, it just happens to be organized along racial lines. So, uh, we also should look at community as a means of a social control, and that is just simply the process through which a group influences the behavior of its members toward conformity with its norms. For example, we could say all the students at Widener are a community. And there is most definitely a process by which the community, or the students and the faculty and the staff at Widener, influence the behavior of the people here with what is considered acceptable and what's not acceptable uh, at this institution. Okay, if we take a look at the sources of police authority, we can pretty much break that down into 3 points. Uh, the officious law enforcers who gain authority from the larger society and focus on the larger society. Those with personal authority, and this is typically something that is developed where these officers have personal power. It can be through the use of force or through just their bearing, how they carry themselves, talk to people, how they conduct themselves, where they can pretty much gain compliance from most members of the community to accomplish the police task. The next one is the community authority, and that's the obtaining or gaining authority from the people who reside in the locality, and the officers will be able to use force or their bearing to enact community expectations. The next thing we're going to look at is the characteristics of community policing. If we recall our community era concepts from the Kelling and Moore work in the eras of policing, one of the things we see right off is that community policing requires a partnership with the community. It requires participatory management. The problem-solving approach is emphasized. And ideally, you want visionary leadership, and with that, what you're looking for there is that you have to have some kind of a concept of at least where you want your community policing program to go and what you're trying to get accomplished. So if we take a look at the community policing, it's largely going to be based on the work of George Kelling and James Q. Wilson, who authored the Broken Windows and Making Neighborhoods articles, which appeared in the Atlantic Monthly. And we're also going to be taking a little bit of a look at where community policing has been tried and has been successful. Among the innovators in this, and I'd invite you to go on to Wikipedia or one of the other criminal justice websites and look up Lee, L-E-E. The middle initial is P, and the last name is Brown, B-R-O-W-N. Mr. Brown was the police chief in Houston, Texas. He was also the county sheriff in Multnomah County in Portland, Oregon. He was police chief in Atlanta, and finally ended up as the director of the National Drug Control Policy, or the Drug Czar, earning that appointment from President Clinton based on the success he had in Houston with implementing the community policing program. Brown, in addition to being a police officer and police chief and a county sheriff, was also a professor of criminology. He has a doctorate from Cal Berkeley and a couple master's degrees, so he pretty much had a pretty good idea of what he was trying to accomplish. And he would be one of these folks that we would look to and say that, okay, he does have a vision of what he wants to do and what he's trying to accomplish. So, moving on to the Broken Windows article. In Broken Windows, George Kelling starts out the article discussing the concept of the idea that one of the problems for crime is that neighborhoods have been allowed to deteriorate. As the example he uses, one broken window will be followed by many more order and order maintenance breakdowns. Disorder and crime, Kelling argues, are intrinsically linked, and that decriminalization of bad behavior is one of the causes of this perpetuation, and also the acceleration in the amount of disorder and crime that we will see in a community. The offenses that Kelling sees as really creating problems for the public and their perception of their safety in their neighborhoods are going to be public drunkenness, vagrancy, panhandling, the presence of undesirables, for example, mental cases where the police and where people are not caring for these folks, homeless people, things along those lines. The presence of street gangs on corners or taking over a corner, something along those lines. Take a look at we did see some examples of this in the new Cops movie, or in the film, that certain bars on street corners, in Philadelphia, where disorder was kind of allowed to go on. People knew that not to go there. So Kelling and Wilson argue in the article, and Kelling largely in the first article, that we see the lack of acceptance of responsibility on the part of the citizens who reside in that neighborhood. We see the lack of acceptance of responsibility by the police, by the city government, by the state government, and because nobody is taking responsibility, we see order just generally begin to break down there. So Kelling argues that because government is not accepting responsibility, and government's agents are not accepting responsibility, and the citizens are not accepting responsibility, things are just going to get worse. One of his arguments here is that police have so alienated, and at that time he is correct about this, that police were so alienated from the public that they really had no hope of getting back into place to try to deal with these order maintenance type problems. Kelling started to discuss at the beginning of the article the Safe Streets and Clean Neighborhoods grant that the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs had granted to Newark, New Jersey Police, and that the officers were being assigned to neighborhoods as what they call Safe Streets cops on foot patrol, and that there was an effort to restore contact with residents and members of the community through the use of more frequent daytime and evening and late afternoon foot patrols. Now, up to this point, if we go back and we take a look at Kelling's work and identify during the reform era of policing, we had an emphasis on motorized patrol. Police officers were frequently in cars, occasionally on motorcycles, but one way or another they were out of contact with the public unless they had a call for service where they actually had to go and talk to somebody. And what was being done in police departments across the country at the time was foot patrol, community contact type assignments, traffic duty where police officers were coming into contact with children, say at a busy intersection because of a school crossing or something along those lines. That type of an assignment was typically being used by police departments as punishment. And because police departments always operate under a portion of the municipal budget, they have limited resources. And if you've got somebody who's given a police chief a problem, one of the way to keep them tied up all day and make sure that he or she is working is to assign them to duty where, well, they really can't get around very much. So one of the things we start to see here is that that concept of the foot patrol and the community contact has really gone by the wayside. And Kelling argues that that is really a bad thing to do, and it does lead to this idea and the concept that and does put into the mind of government officials that they do not have to accept responsibility for what's going on in that neighborhood. And I think probably in history, the one of the classic comments that have been made on that, where government just basically walked away from people, was during the 1960s. I recall reading a quote from former Maryland governor at the time, Spiro Agnew, when a reporter asked him about the rioting and the looting and the burning of neighborhoods in the city of Baltimore, that what he thought of that. And he said, well, what do I really care for? I live in Annapolis. And he was right, and he knew that his power base as governor of Maryland was not in Baltimore City, and his concept was to let it burn. But the thing is that those riots, not only in Baltimore, but in other areas of the country, in other cities of the country, had just allowed government to walk away from its responsibility. And also, at the same time, the message was being put out there under the reform era that, well, we're the police, we're the professionals, let us handle it. So the order breakdown just kind of accelerated. So we'll go take a look into the next article, which is making neighborhoods safe. As their follow-up to broken windows and the discussion of order breakdown and the need to kind of restore this order maintenance function of police and city and state government, Wilson and Kelling get published again in the Atlantic Monthly an additional article called "Making Neighborhoods Safe." You should have a copy of that. I will make sure there is a copy available to you on the internet or on Campus Cruiser. Now, if we take a look at making neighborhoods safe, one of the things we start to see right away is that Kelling and Wilson start to argue that the offenders, they generally live with their victims. And this is true of crime across the board. One of the things that pretty much every police officer knows is that you are most likely to apprehend a murderer because, well, you got called there and the murderer was still there. In fact, it's very, very common for a uniformed patrol officer to arrest somebody who has committed a murder because they typically kill people that they know. The same thing happens with, a lot of other big offenses. People who are going to, engage in armed robbery as an exercise to make a living, are typically familiar with the banks, the liquor stores, the gas stations, the convenience stores, whatever it is they're going to rob. They're in and out of those places all the time. And so we do know that offenders live with their victims. One of the things that is seen here as very common is that the targets are often seen as safe or soft or very easy to take advantage of by the people who are actually going to commit the offense in that location. One of the things Kelling and Wilson argue is throughout this article is that the police and the community partnership causes offenders to look elsewhere. Kelling and Wilson argue that if the police and the community take action to take a good hard look at improving street lighting, improving visibility, pedestrian traffic, things along those lines, that offenders will not take the risk and will move somewhere else or not commit the offense. So we would either see, as we would say in the academic area, displacement, or we would see discouragement, or the crime just isn't going to occur. Deterrence. So if we take a look at one of the things Kelling and Wilson argue here is that police need to change their definition of success and put a lot less emphasis on arrests and counting the number of arrests and counting tickets and issuing traffic tickets. I'll talk a little bit more about traffic tickets in a minute, but for initially what they're arguing is that police administrators and police managers need to stop emphasizing counting numbers as defining success. The studies that are out there show that crime rates change only a little bit when the police start implementing community policing type programs. But one of the things that does change significantly when people see police officers in their neighborhood is the perception of danger and the perception of safety. People just, when they see police regularly in their neighborhood, especially when the officers on bicycles, foot patrol, or are in frequent verbal contact with people, one of the things they do understand is that or it seems to create a sense of safety and security, because people always perceive, well, the cops are always around. So that's one of the things Kelling and Wilson argue is that the first thing that needs to be changed is that perception of danger, or the perception that the citizenry has of its safety. And if that perception of safety can be increased, people will start coming out. The thing that, and the method that they look at, is that they want police to start focusing on solving problems and not being what has commonly been called incident driven. What incident driven would refer to would be where a citizen dials 911 or dials the 7-digit number and says, can you send the police out to this location to address this immediate problem. Kelling and Wilson are arguing that when there's the presence of, say, a street gang hanging around one corner in a neighborhood, or a group of adolescent juveniles harassing people, say in a shopping district, or we start to see in a business district where there's a number of purse snatchings or things like that, the police need to start focusing on how they're going to fix that problem there. It can be as simple as making sure that there's an officer walking up and down the street, and while that officer is walking up and down the street, if the officer's in constant contact with the kids and constant contacts with the young adults, even just asking them to move along, talking to them about what they're doing there, how's school going, things along those lines, even if they're not going to school or they're not, over time, if that contact can be developed, it will start to focus in on that problem. And we should keep in mind as we go through this that we know from Marvin Wolfgang's work and from some other studies that have been done that a small portion of offenders are responsible for a significant portion of offenses. So if we can figure out in the neighborhood who's doing most of this stuff, we can address that one individual or those couple individuals, and things will start to improve. Okay, and closing this up, as you read through these articles, one of the things that you should be becoming more and more aware of is that under community policing efforts, these are people-intensive efforts. If we refocus the organization's effort from incident-driven to community-oriented, one of the things we do have to do is that we have to get out and we have to be in contact with members of the community. Uh, it's a lot easier from the perspective of the police to just wait for the call to come in and then go out and handle the call. But what you end up doing is basically the firefighting concept of where, okay, there's a problem, now I got to go take care of it, and as soon as I get done, I got to go put out the fire over on the next block. By refocusing the organization's effort to community-oriented and seeking out a problem-solving solution, we're going to start paying attention to a lot of other things. The people in the neighborhood will typically know who's causing the problem and where the problems are. So we would see officers start to focus on that. Officers start focusing on what I have said repeatedly is the single greatest crime prevention device out there, and that is the street light. The lack of street lights or having a large number of street lights not working is really a very, very expensive project and an expensive proposition for your city or town. For example, the cities and towns typically rent those. They have to pay. Back when I was a sergeant in the right around 1990, the township I was working for was paying $120 to have the street lights installed, and then they had to pay a monthly fee of it was a couple dollars a month to light the thing. Now the problem is that a dollar, $2 a month doesn't sound like a lot of money for the electricity. But one of the things is that if you've got 2,500 street lights in a small town, you've suddenly got a significant electric bill there. And then the thing rolls around that you've bought this street light, had the electric company install it, and then the thing's not working. So, that is part of the order maintenance function and this focus on solutions that if you get street lights into key areas, officers have to pay attention so they keep these things working, and then it requires a little bit of follow-up. One of the things too that we should and you should be paying attention to as you're preparing your articles, the community policing efforts are not something that we in government are going to see as if a program's implemented and the program is problem focused. The easy thing to do, as I said, is to go out, make the arrest, write the tickets, and you can completely get numbers right back to the public saying, okay, we've gone into that area or that neighborhood in the city and we've made these numbers of arrests, we've written these number of tickets. Our presence is good and things are improving. And that's more of a suppression method. It will temporarily deter crime, but in time, as the police begin to focus their efforts elsewhere, things will start to rapidly return to their former status, and you'll see the big increase in crime. But if the government is and the city managers and city fathers are patient enough to wait for a community policing type program to work, and they're not seeking the immediate result, you can really begin to work on getting the problems in that community solved. So, and the last thing I did want to make mention was on the last slide we did talk a little bit about tickets. One of the things that does go on, surprisingly enough, is that police departments that do write a lot of traffic tickets for some reason do have typically a low crime rate. One of the things that had been passed on to me with this by a professor that I had while I was attending college was that he said the police departments that had vigorous traffic enforcement were basically accomplishing two things. One, they had a low crime rate, and that they were going to be able to keep it that way because even as traffic enforcers, they were still in regular contact with the citizenry. And he said for the, as he put it, the people who are willing to go out and commit crime, it did reduce one of the avenues of escape from the crime by using the automobile. And with that, he is correct. It is a very risky proposition to go out and rob a store and have the armed robber being caught on the way, and leaving the store because police officers saw the car leave. So one of the things we should focus on here is that departments that do write a lot of tickets frequently have low crime rates. One of the things I will argue too from the police perspective is that if you're writing a lot of tickets, it's because you have time to do it. You've got to actually go out and look for the traffic violations. So that can be a double-edged sword. Now, and we should keep in mind that one of the things that does happen in departments that write a lot of tickets, over time the officers are going to very much alienate the people who reside in that community. So my experience has been it's best to make judicious use of the traffic ticket as an enforcement tool. And anyhow, I hope these remarks will be helpful to you as you're preparing the community policing papers. As always, if there's any problems, feel free to call me or to drop an email, and I will see what I can do to help you out. And hopefully this presentation has been helpful to your effort to produce that paper.